Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. Which is fine. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country. If you're still looking for a New Year's resolution, here's one. Get out of your media bubble. The most frustrating thing that happens to me whenever I'm off is people I run into want me to do my job, which I'm on vacation from, privately in restaurants and at parties, and, well, the bathhouse is a separate situation. But look, I'm happy to share my opinions wherever, except for this. Everybody, left and right, is only half informed.
Bill Maher is on an exposed spree, ripping the curtain back on why the DNC train is derailing. This time his target is New York Mayor Mamdani. Mamdani has laid out bold plans in New York, including higher taxes and proposals involving ICC. And they didn't sit well with Ma. So the veteran comedian fired back louder and spicier. As always, hit the subscribe button if you haven't, and let's get down to business.
Let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver. And if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants. And since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private...
Yep, this was the very phrase that sent Maher over the edge. Seize private property. Those three words weren't spoken by some fringe protester either. They came from Mamdani's right-hand woman, a phrase commonly associated with far-left ideology. Tamar, that wasn't careless rhetoric. It was a warning siren. He's long argued that electing Mamdani could drag New York down a radical path, pushing the city to a more government-directed economic model. And now, in Maher's eyes, that prediction is starting to unfold in real time. This is exactly why he's furious. Because once politicians become comfortable saying the quiet part out loud, the mask slips completely. Ma sees it not as policy debate, but as ideological capture, the moment where extreme theory replaces common sense governance. And when Maher connects those dots, he doesn't whisper. What he says next doesn't just criticize me. It sends shock waves straight through the DNC, triggering significant political backlash.
Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home? I mean, these are the kind of utterances I might forgive as something a dumb white girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes, for co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime.
It's easy to understand Maher's frustration here, because he expected her to at least do basic research before declaring that owning a house is somehow white supremacy. That claim didn't just sound extreme, it sounded lazy. This wasn't someone speaking from ignorance or lack of access to information. She attended an elite college, an institution that prides itself on teaching critical thinking, evidence-based reasoning, and proper research methods. Maher's point was simple. If you're given that level of education, the bare minimum expectation is that you use it. Instead, he watched academic language get twisted into activist slogans, stripped of context and facts. To Maher, this wasn't progressivism. It was intellectual malpractice. When ideology replaces analysis, education becomes meaningless. That's what truly angered him, not disagreement, but the abandonment of logic in favor of talking points. In his view, when educated voices promote ideas that is reckless, it doesn't elevate the conversation. It undermines the quality of the discussion. You know, I am in support of abolishing ICE.
I am in support of abolishing ICE, and I'll tell you why. Because what we see is an entity that has no interest in fulfilling its stated reason to exist. We're seeing a government agency that is supposed to be enforcing some kind of immigration law, but instead what it's doing is terrorizing people, no matter their immigration status, no matter the facts of the law, no matter the facts of the case. And I'm tired of waking up every day and seeing a new image of someone being dragged out of a car, dragged out of their home, dragged out of their life. What we need to see is
You see how Momani and to a large extent the left-leaning media have portrayed in an overly simplified and extreme way when the reality is far more complicated. In Maher's view, the agency has been reduced to a political prop rather than discussed honestly. Time and again, headlines have accused of horrific abuses, only for later investigations or court findings to walk those claims back or reveal missing context. Yet, the corrections never travel as far as the outrage. That imbalance is what infuriates March. Nobody is arguing that it's flawless. The argument is that distortion has replaced truth. When enforcement agencies are portrayed as villains by default, serious policy debate dies. Everything becomes emotional theater instead of facts. To March, this brand of politics thrives on exaggeration, fear, and selective storytelling. And that's exactly what sets him off. Not disagreement, but the deliberate rewriting of reality to serve ideology. Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist.
Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. Which is fine. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country.
Maher's frustration isn't really aimed at Momani himself. It's directed at hardline factions within the DNC who refuse to speak up against what Momani is doing. In Maher's view, the real problem isn't the radicals pushing extreme ideas, but the silence of the moderates who know better and say nothing. That silence, he argues, is what allows fringe politics to grow unchecked. And this isn't new. It's a familiar pattern. We saw it play out last year when mainstream liberals refused to challenge the excesses of woke culture, choosing party unity over intellectual honesty. Instead of drawing clear lines, they stayed quiet, hoping the storm would pass. Ma believes that reluctance came at a cost. Voters noticed credibility collapsed, and the party lost touch with reality. Now he sees history repeating itself once again. Ideological extremes are being normalized while responsible voices within the DNC remain missing in action.
And this is the pendulum never lands in the middle problem I'm always about. Really, the choices we get here are either the worst version of crony capitalism or communism, Either a side deal for the Trump family every time he does business overseas, or the lady who says, impoverish the white middle class. Oh yeah, there's a great campaign slogan for you. Honestly, as New York mayoral races go, I was less creeped out by Anthony Weiner's.
Ma is genuinely alarmed by what he sees as Mamdani's far-left political positions. He never imagined the liberals would manage to outdo themselves, especially after fully embracing woke culture the way they did. In Maher's mind, that era already represented rock bottom. He believed the DNC couldn't possibly sink lower than the moment it prioritized slogans over substance and activism over reality. Surely, he thought that disaster would force some self-reflection. But instead of correcting course, the party doubled down. That's what shocks him most. Ma admits he overestimated the liberals' ability or willingness to pull themselves back to the center. Rather than learning from voter backlash, party leaders continued drifting further left, normalizing ideas that once lived on the political fringe. Tomorrow, this isn't progress. It's ideological amnesia. And the more the party refuses to confront that truth, the more disconnected it becomes from everyday Americans. Now listen to Mamdani as he explains one of his policy proposals.
These are programs for every single New Yorker. These are not programs that are going to ask the immigration status of any one of the children. All of those children are New Yorkers. They should all be enrolled in pre-K and 3K, no matter where they were born or where they come from. And we are also proud to be a sanctuary city. What a sanctuary city means is that we have policies in place, policies that have existed for years in this city, that deny ICE agents access into schools, hospitals, city properties, or even the properties of city contractors, unless those ICE agents can present a judicial warrant signed by a judge. We know that the vast majority of the time, ICE agents are not presenting that kind of documentation. If they're presenting any documentation, it tends to be an administrative warrant, and oftentimes there isn't any documentation even provided.
So, you see the concern New York could soon be facing serious immigration and homelessness crisis following Mamdani's announcements. Critics argue this is a familiar story, one California has lived through for decades. Policies introduced with good intentions gradually strained public systems, overwhelmed housing markets, and stretched social services beyond capacity. Now, many fear New York is about to repeat that same experiment. Mamdani's pledge to provide free health care and other government benefits to everyone, regardless of immigration status, has set off alarm bells. Supporters call it compassionate governance. Opponents warn it creates powerful incentives that the city simply isn't equipped to handle. Maher's point is that New York already struggles with affordability, shelter shortages, and overburdened hospitals. Expanding eligibility could significantly accelerate those problems over time. To him, this isn't empathy versus cruelty. It's realism versus denial, and ignoring the long-term consequences, he argues, is how cities face long-term structural decline.
It is the dead of winter. Another snowstorm is coming, and homeless encampments are still a critical problem in Mayor Mamdani's New York. So how is the mayor going to deal with it? Political reporter Marcia Kramer took her questions to Mamdani in this story that you will see here only on CBS News New York.
They are an eyesore. CBS News New York discovering homeless encampments, 2 on the Upper West Side, 2 in Hell's Kitchen, with many wondering how the new mayor will deal with the twin problems of finding a humane solution and optics that make it look like the city is out of control. This man, afraid to show his face, says he's called 311 repeatedly about the 2 encampments on West 45th Street.
They take the call like they're supposed to, but nothing's really happening.
How do you feel about the fact that nothing's happening?
Well, I don't feel good about it because I've been in this neighborhood for 3.
So, you see how homelessness is placing growing strain on what was once a thriving New York. What used to be a symbol of opportunity and ambition now struggles under a crisis that appears to worsen by the day. Even major outlets like CBS have reported on the growing number of encampments, overwhelmed shelters, and strained city resources. Streets that once buzzed with commerce now reflect policy failure and neglect. And this isn't an isolated problem. The same pattern has played out in California for years. Skyrocketing housing costs, unchecked homelessness, and government programs that spend billions with little measurable improvement. That's why critics are alarmed. They've seen this movie before. New York is facing the exact challenge California never managed to solve, and many fear it's heading down the same path. Maher's warning is simple. Ignoring reality doesn't make the crisis disappear. It allows it to spread.
Mr. Mayor, I wondered if you could indulge me for a second. So I took the problem to the mayor himself, showing him video of people camped on the street in such frigid weather. What is your office going to do about it? And is it acceptable, given the fact that it's 21 degrees, for these people to be there on the street, on the Upper West Side, and getting no help?
It is not acceptable for a New Yorker to have to find shelter outside, whether on the Upper West Side or anywhere in this city. New Yorkers should be able to find a place to call their home. And what I have said consistently, first as a candidate, now as the mayor, is that outcome.
Manny has made it clear that he doesn't plan to remove homeless individuals from the streets by force, instead promising a softer voluntary approach. On paper, it sounds compassionate, but critics immediately point out that this strategy closely mirrors what Governor Gavin Newsom implemented in California, and that experiment delivered little to no results. Newsom's plan relied heavily on the idea that homeless individuals would voluntarily seek help, enter shelters, and accept services on their own terms. In reality, participation remained low, and encampments continued to expand. Billions were spent, yet sidewalks stayed crowded and tents multiplied. That's why Maher and others are skeptical. Good intentions, they argue, don't automatically produce good outcomes. When enforcement is removed entirely, accountability